what is the first step for an executive when confronted with disruption? Believe it or not, the first step is to not overreact. There's a simple simulation called the beer game, created by MIT decades ago, popularized in a book called The Fifth Discipline, where they had a supply chain. And they had a brewery taking in raw materials from the farmers, and then the brewery would brew the beer, and then the beer would be moved to the distributors, and then to the wholesalers, and then to the retailers. And then myself or Darren would go into the store, and we'd buy our beer, and the retailer would buy a certain number of crates of beer per week. So a simple supply chain. But there was a 2-week delay in the simulation. So the retailer would order the beer, but it would be 2 weeks later before the beer would arrive from the wholesaler. Same between wholesale and distributor, same between distributor and brewery, and so on. And I did this simulation in 2017 with about 45 Agile coaches and systems thinkers. Really, really interesting, because these people are educated on agility and systems thinking. And when I ran the simulation, I messed with people's minds a little bit. I said, David Beckham is going to be doing the campaign. He's going to be, summer's coming. It's going to be, the weather's getting nice, and the TV ad campaign is going to be on soon, and so we expect sales to go up. You see, and so they're playing the game, and they're all doing the orders are going up the system, the beer is coming down the system, all nice and relaxed. And then I fired, so every week they're getting 4 crates of beer a week, the retailer. So then I fired in an order of 8, you see. And then most of the tables overreacted. They said, oh, the ads are working, the TV campaign's working. It's, there's a 2-week delay, so we're going to run out of beer, so let's order more beer. And so people were ordering, 16, 30, 50 crates of beer, right? They went nuts. 2 tables didn't. They said, just want to see, is there another order like that? Because this is just one data point. And so the people who were systems thinkers, they didn't overreact. Said, yeah, it's one data point. I want to see, is there another one like that? And they kept with the 4, 4, 4. They had 1 8 all right to count for the 8 and led on to the 4. And just when the system calmed down again, I put in another 8, but it was much later. Or you couldn't say it was a pattern. You know what I mean? It was like it was too far apart. I stuck in another 8, and the tables that were overreacting completely overreacted, to the extent that the wholesalers were full, the warehouses were full, the distributor was full, and the brewery had to stop brewing beer. In the real world, of course, all those orders will get cancelled. You got a lot of beer that's going to go off, and so on. And the point is, you don't act like a whack-a-mole, whacking all the moles. Yeah. Oh, something happens, and we just whack that mole. Like, that's called whack-a-mole management. It's overreacting, and it's very similar to a drunken man walking down an alley, right? Kind of as directional as that. And so the first thing is, you do not overreact. But if there is actually a pattern, and you're like one of those 2 tables out of 5 that did act in a systems thinking way, didn't overreact, then what you need to do is you need to really check for cognitive dissonance, because you'll have a lot of people who have been snorting at the trough for a long time, getting their bonuses and milking that cow for the organization really, really well, and think they're doing great. Nokia is a great example of that. BlackBerry is an example of that. And it's kind of interesting, because even companies today that I've helped, I see that slow-moving car crash happening all over again, because I think, oh, best 2 years ever. I'm thinking in my head, oh, I'm really worried here. You're going to get disrupted very, very soon. So we need some way of checking groupthink. So as an executive, you need to make sure that you have cognitive diversity in your group, that you have people who are not always agreeing with you, that there's people challenging you as well, so that if there's some dissonance and we're keeping on proceeding the way we are, and actually we're not taking notice of we're not taking this new threat seriously, which, by the way, I see with some banks at the moment, where they treat their competition as their legacy competition, but they don't actually take the new competition seriously. Big mistake. All right. So are we acting whack-a-mole? Are we reacting sensibly? Is there cognitive dissonance? Can we find ways to eliminate that cognitive dissonance? One way to eliminate cognitive dissonance is to get fresh thinking in. And BMW did a brilliant job of that, by the way, a few years ago, when they were struggling with the sales of their cars and they needed kind of new, funkier designs. So they got an Italian sailboat designer to come in and design their car. Like, think like $1 million per yard type yachts from Milan, not like the 7 million quid ones and Sunseekers from Portsmouth or Southampton, right? I mean, I wouldn't mind a 7 million one, that'd be okay for me, but I think really, really expensive. They got one of these sailboat designers into BMW. Now you got the BMW X6, X8, X2, the GT series, all these ones. And I'm not sure from the iX, by the way, if it's that person has left, because I think they might have gone back to the previous design. But for a while, they had fresh thinking, and that really helped them. And you can see now as well with BMW, the way they've been a fast follower for Tesla. And I think Tesla are in a bit of trouble now because I haven't seen a new X model. I haven't seen there's a new design for the S, but I'm not sure how different it really is. And BMW have been a really good example of being able to respond to what's happening with electric and so on. And so making sure you don't have cognitive dissonance by injecting fresh thinking. In the complex space, believe it or not, the experts can get you into a lot of trouble. You still need experts, but you also need fresh thinking to discover what's going on. And there was a story, I think, from skyscrapers in Manhattan and New York, 1930s, where this property developer was trying to figure out what was going on because the elevators were taking too long to get to the ground floor. They got loads of complaints from the tenants, like an asset management company managing all these skyscrapers. And 45 seconds on average, which meant sometimes it was 2 minutes and sometimes it was 10 seconds. It's just average. So the developer got all the architects together. They couldn't figure it out. Got all the lift engineers together, the elevator engineers together. They couldn't figure it out. He had the sense to call a conference, get them together, have a conference. And they had a conference, and they still couldn't figure it out. There was a young man, 24 years of age, at the front. He's kind of smirking, and the property developer was like a cranky teacher. And, young man, would you like to share the joke with us? What are you finding so funny around here? And the young man said, well, I think you might have a solution to this. I said, well, young man, all these architects and lift engineers or elevator engineers that be trying to figure this out. You got the answer? Yeah, I think I do. He said, what's your solution, young man? Install mirrors. Let's look in the mirror. Install mirrors in the lobby, and while you're at, will you stick them in the elevators as well? Young man, why is that going to solve our 45 seconds? Young man said it won't, but they won't notice the 45 seconds because they'll be out looking at each other, right, and checking each other out. So the point is that was a perception problem, not an engineering or not an architecture problem. So if you just rely on your experts, you will get entrained thinking, and you get what we call analysis paralysis. You need to get that fresh thinking. Can't stress that enough. But then what you need to do is, even if you solved your cognitive dissonance, even if you don't have whack-a-mole going on, what's your switching cost as an organization? So if you've got a load of work going that way, what's your cost to switch your work from going that way to going that way? Are you like an oil tanker where it takes ages and then you need to eventually turn? Or can you go and then move over to the new area without cancelling millions of dollars of work in the process? And some approaches are very good at reducing your switching cost. And one option that every executive should be aware of is flow. So when you're starting work every quarter and you're saying, I want the teams to do blah, 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 have a look at what work is in the system already. And if they have work that actually they haven't finished in the last quarter, maybe you should hold off on bringing that new work in. Because if you want to be able to react to a disruption, you want the system to be ready to take that work in and just switch direction really quickly. You shove more work in on top of them, and they'll be like a really slow oil tanker trying to turn around, because I saw one case, 3 years. 3 years of work in progress. Imagine turning that tanker around. Imagine how disrupted you're going to be after that. So you need to be in a situation where you're helping your teams to improve their flow. So how long work takes gets shorter and shorter. So now you've got more flexibility as an executive. So every quarter, even every month, you can decide where you want to lay your bets, because let's call it spade a spade. We're laying bets, we're gambling when we're investing in product development, product management. And you also need to understand the complexity that you're dealing with as well. You need to make sure that you've got executives and reports around you that understand uncertainty and they can embrace it. And if you have executives who expect you to have a Gantt chart for what you're going to do by Q3, in the next year, we don't even know what's going to happen in Q1. So we're kind of fooling ourselves. So we can have targets, and we can, I don't really like targets, but we can have kind of provisional dates when we might get things and so on. But I think that's even dangerous. I think we need to have a kind of a now, next, later approach and be really flexible as an executive. So the first step for me is get an appreciation for flow. Understand flow. And if your organization is taking a long time to deliver stuff, what you need to do with your coaches to get that down, so now you can reduce your switching costs, so now you go in the other direction. That's what I would do.